Hello, everyone, and welcome to Simply Technical. Back again here with another episode. It's a little late in the week, but that's okay. And actually, for the first time in a while, it's kind of light outside when we're recording,
Yeah.
or at least middle of the day. We're happy to be back. We are gonna kind of go over some like mental health stuff. There's a viral tweet or viral thread, I guess you would say. I mean, it's from Twitter, a thread from Twitter. With the new social media, you gotta have to.
Oh yeah, you can't say threads.
You can't say
anymore.
threads; people will get confused. But it's a list of tweets on Twitter by George _ Mac, and we'll make sure and link the thread in the description of the episode, so you can check it out too. Because he's listing like 25 examples of things that are neglected or ignored by the media, but will be studied throughout history or by historians. And the first one that kind of popped out, and I mean, it's the first one of the thread, but it kind of took Keaton's attention or our attention. And it's about mental hospitals and prisons. And I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Keaton, unless you have something to add.
You can go ahead and share.
So there's, let's see, I can scroll down a little bit. And it's like, what happened to mental hospitals? Theory. The USA decided to treat more of the mental health or mental ill at a community level, which failed. And then 2, had a new hope in a wonder drug that didn't work. Thorazine. Is that
Thorazine,
correct?
yeah.
And for those listening and not watching, about in the 70s, late 60s, the amount of people in mental hospitals, adults in mental hospitals, like significantly dropped and continued to drop. I mean, it was straight up and down in the 70s, a straight drop down. And then about the 80s on into the early 2000s, prison like population just skyrocketed. And what we were discussing before a little bit about how they're not necessarily exactly correlated, because maybe there's some type of economic issues or something, and so prisons might go up or go down, but there could be a lag in mental hospital patients as prisons go up, prison population goes up. So what do you kind of think about this, Keaton?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's super interesting. I think it appears that they're correlated. They don't necessarily present any evidence that they are, or one
Causation.
is causative, but it seems like a pretty strong hypothesis to assume that when you have this massive decline in mental hospital admits, and you have a simultaneous or semi-simultaneous rise in prisoners, that inmates, that there's definitely at least some contribution going on there. And I think not only is the fact that the mental hospital decline happens in the 70s like super interesting, it's also even more interesting that it's so low now, when like the mental health problems have just skyrocketed over the last 15 years or so. And I wonder, if you extended that graph out, if the prisoner population has also skyrocketed in the last few years.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see diagnosis, I guess, of mental health issues or mental health patients. I don't know if that's the right term. Alongside this graph of, hey, if it's consistent, which I think we can both agree that it's not consistent, that as of recent, mental health patients or mental health issues in people have risen quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I mean, we talked about this on the podcast with Connor several weeks ago, where, I mean, even in the last just few years, there's been a massive increase in depression and suicide, and more so suicide attempts. But we don't seem to be interested in this, in sort of establishing the old mental hospital model. And I actually was reading, and I was like, why did we get rid of these mental hospitals? What's the reasons? And George Mack in the thread lays out a couple of reasons. And the Thorazine, which is like the first psychotropic drug that was widely prescribed, they thought it would be a miracle drug for ending mental health issues. But then one of the other reasons is because people thought it was super inhumane to just take, people they assumed were crazy and put them in these hospitals without sort of crime or anything. So what do you think? What do you make of that assumption right there?
About the Thorazine or about the
inhumanity of mental hospitals?
I think you get into some pretty gray areas, especially if they're like, and when it comes to like rehab and stuff now, unless you're like a threat to somebody else or yourself, you can't unwillingly be admitted.
Mm-hmm.
So, and maybe even in those cases, may not be able to be unwillingly committed, but you get into some pretty gray area, like from a rights standpoint of forcing somebody to go somewhere they don't want to go as a free adult or free human. So, but then also like what constitutes, it worries me if you were to like pass some type of law or some type of black and white criteria that was you're a harm to somebody or somebody else. Cause you can expand that as you want, oh, well,
you said he was going to podcast.
What'd you say?
You said this on a podcast.
Well, you said something
in a mental hospital.
Yeah. We don't agree with what you said, or, you were 12 years old and you said, something on call, like on a video game that you got upset and you said, I'm going to kill you. And, like somebody overheard that and mistook it. And, you were playing GTA 5 or something, you know what I mean? So like it could easily be contorted or to take somebody's rights away that would make them be harm to themselves or somebody else. Obviously there's some very clear black and white examples of people that should be admitted. But like I said, that gray area is like the law is very hard to make things black and white when they're gray. Very simple.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my thought on that. That's probably not really a good answer to what your question was, but
no, I mean, I think I actually basically completely agree with you. It's almost like everything in, I guess most things in general have this like pendulum where maybe you take it too far and then the pendulum has to swing back and it just ends up going too far back the other way. And it seems like, maybe in the 50s, they took the mental hospital thing too far and then the pendulum started to swing back and now it's, all the way back at the bottom. And maybe we went a little bit too far with restricting the mental hospitals, and there has to be some kind of happy medium. Because there's definitely people who probably would not willingly be admitted, but are a danger to themselves. Like, I mean, schizophrenic people probably are not going to be admitted. And I don't know. I mean, a lot of states do provide the resources and facilities. I guess they usually take it down to the city level, the community level, kind of like Georgia Mac said. But it'd be interesting to see if there's any research that shows that this actually, if a city implements a more strict admission policy on mental health patients, is there any benefit or detriment to the well-being of the patient / the amount of mental health patients in the city over a long span of time?
I would say it's probably generally good.
Yeah.
But in all cases, there's always going to be bad apples. Like if you look at like a nursing home or something like that, those people are very widely, I say very, there's a lot of well-documented cases of abuse in those kind of situations where somebody has power over another person and they take advantage of that. That happens like in police force and stuff as well. They abuse power. Just this power dynamic that can occur or is occurring. And that is going to extend into a mental hospital of like, well, I'm better than you, this power dynamic. Well, you're going to do what I say kind of thing. You get a big ego and they don't listen. And the person hits them or abuses them some way verbally or physically. So like that's definitely a lower percentage probably is my guess. But as far as overall, it's probably generally good.
Yeah. Yeah.
As long as you're not violating anyone's rights.
Yeah, definitely. But I'm sure there's always like you said, there's always times where that gray area can get very interesting or dangerous in a way.
It gets pretty, it gets very gray.
Yeah.
I was going to say it's very dark or very white, but that would be closer to one side. So it's gray. And so I guess let's talk about men a little bit in this. I know we didn't really talk about that before, but prisons are mainly dictated, or mainly men. What is it, like 90% or something?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Prisons are men. Which men are generally less likely to get mental health, talk about mental health, to get mental health assistance. Do you think that plays a pretty large role in this study? I'm pointing to my screen. I guess it's your.
No, I don't. All right. I mean, I don't know because I haven't really thought about this much. I know that men make up the majority of prisoners. Men make up I think men actually make up the majority of like extreme mental health cases. Not like depression, but like extreme polarized, like schizophrenic, crazy. I don't know that for sure, so I'll need to check. But I think that's true. I don't necessarily think that. Are you asking if the decrease in mental health availability has caused men to become more likely to become prisoners?
I'm kind of just probing in general about men in this study.
Yeah.
So to add on to what you kind of said a little bit, men are typically polarizing, at least in their mental capacity. Men are typically not average, I guess you would say. So like when it comes to being smart, or even like their status, men are either very poor or very rich.
I mean, yeah, men make up the majority of the homeless population. That's one thing, and then they make up the majority of the billionaires.
So, like, men are very polarizing in a lot of the things they do. They're either smart or they're dumb. Like, what is 100 is your general IQ? Well, men make up a majority of those with high IQ and the majority of those that make low IQ. So they're on the extreme ends of most things. To add to what you said about the men being polarizing. But as far as this study, I would think that prisons are mainly men, so maybe were women and men in hospitals like 50-50. That's something that I guess would be.
I'm guessing probably not, but I don't know for sure.
But if men are polarizing, like we said, I guess more men probably would have been in mental hospitals because of them being on the higher end of having those kind of problems. So I was just kind of curious of what your thoughts were on how men relate to this study specifically.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I guess we could step further outside of the study and individual. I actually have been seeing a lot of articles, like think pieces recently about like what exactly is wrong with men, and everyone has their own hypothesis. And basically it shows like men are more likely to be suicidal or depressed nowadays. And I haven't dug too much into it, but do you have, I mean, because you asked originally, did you kind of have a reason?
No, it's reasons? Just, well, I was looking at the study and I was thinking, okay, men are more in more prisons. Men are less likely to seek some type of mental health assistance or help. And so I just didn't, I was seeing those things are correlated in that study.
Oh, okay. I see. Probably back before that, you're trying to say, or maybe potentially saying that people were probably more forced into mental health, and now it's more like, okay, you can go if you want to, but men are less likely to just,
men are less likely to just volunteer.
Yeah.
Unless they have, like, I think if you have a strong family unit, and you have an issue, a mental health issue like this, they're more likely to push you. And like I said, if you respect your family, you're more likely to respect what they say of like, oh, that probably isn't normal.
Yeah.
And so you'd go. But as our families degrade and families fall apart, as we get more into this internet age and all that stuff, so you're less likely to have that kind of support system behind you. So you're also less likely to listen to them.
Yeah.
Hey, that's not normal. You need to go to the doctor. No, I don't really care what you have to say. I'm going to spite you because you suggested it.
No, okay. So just also related to this, and it's also in this thread of the 25 things that media doesn't cover, but historians will look at. Basically shows that there's a massive friendship recession. So it's number 14 in this, and
I can scroll down and look at it.
It shows that 15% of men have no close friends, while 10% of women have no close friends. And in 1990, this was, I mean, you don't even really have much of a percent. You have 3% of men had no close friends. So 5x increase in the last 30 years. That seems dangerous.
Yeah, well, growing up when I was pretty young, we didn't really we had neighbors, like people lived around us, but we lived on like a busy street. We didn't really live in a neighborhood. Like our house backed up to a neighborhood, but we weren't a part of the neighborhood, if that kind of makes sense, because we were on a busy street in front of the neighborhood. So like we didn't know our neighbors, or I didn't know the neighbors. I mean, I was pretty young when we moved into another house, and we knew our neighbors, like we met our neighbors. But I've lived in this house. I just moved a year ago, closing in on a year, and I've met one of the neighbors, and he doesn't even live there. He's like the son. Like, I've even seen them outside, and I say hi, but I don't know them.
Yeah.
And I don't think they really care to know me. I don't think they. Not that I mean, I'm a young person. They're slightly older, in their 40s and 50s. So I don't know if it's the age disparity or people just don't want to be friends with anybody. They pull in their garage, they close their garage, they turn their car off, and they go inside. They don't talk to anybody. We don't mow at the same times. Like, if you were mowing at the same time, hey, how's it going? Like we're mowing together. That's cool.
Yeah.
But like, nobody really cares. They just want to be by themselves. I don't know.
It's a weird loneliness epidemic is what everyone calls that. And it's gotten worse since COVID. I think a lot of people just got used to being alone and not hanging out. And the neighbor thing is very true. Like, I mean, I've met my neighbors. I've talked to them a decent amount of times, but we don't like hang out. When I grew up, we hung out with our neighbors all the time. And the families would just go sit out in the cul-de-sac and while we all rode our bikes and they would all hang out together. But I don't really know how many communities are really like that anymore. And I don't know. This is definitely, I don't know why I didn't notice this one before when we were going over this tweet thread, because this is definitely something that I think will be massively impactful. And I think social media has a lot to do with why we have no close friends, because we're getting this sort of hit of sociability and connection, but it's just not the same when it's on social media. And if you didn't have social media before, you had to go get that hit somewhere. And it was, hanging out with the neighbors, hanging out with the friends. And now it's like, okay, yeah, we can follow each other we can go to college together. We can be good friends for 4 years. And then we, go our separate ways. We still live in the same city, but we can see each other on social media. Oh, you posted something yesterday. Okay, that's all I needed. I mean, I'm updated on you now, so it's not like I need to call and say what's up or go hang out. And I don't know. This is going to be something. It's another thing that we kind of talked about with Connor. A bit.
Yeah, we talked about how it's just not the same. To your point, like you could talk online, you could text somebody as much as you want, but the real relationship is built when you're talking to each other face to face and experiencing things together. And I think it's unprofoundly important to men. I mean, women are usually more social, I guess you could say. But when men have their friend group, their core friends, like one, nothing breaks that bond or shouldn't be breaking that bond. And two, like just hanging out with your friends and sitting around on the couch watching TV or something, watching this game is like extremely important.
Yeah.
It's like profound, and it's not necessarily about the content that you're watching, but just being with each other. I'll steal from Andrew Tate a little bit. Don't hate me if you don't like him in the comments, but he said one of the, and I tend to agree with this. That's why I'm using it. But one of the most profound things and the most greatest experiences men can have with each other is sitting around their coffee table in their living room. For him in prison, is just hanging out with each other and like building a relationship and talking about things, kind of like how we're doing now, but like in person. Just discussing like sports and just things that you guys are passionate about, things that you guys experience, telling stories. Like I look back in college and people have asked me, what's your best experience from college? And I think about of like being in the duplex with you guys and just sitting on the couches and just hanging out and talking.
Oh yeah.
Didn't even do anything cool. Like that was it. But like that was such a great experience and it's so much fun. And we don't do that as much as we used to. We got families now, or got other things to do. But like I think back to those times and how much fun it was. So
it's honestly really sad. Like I've been realizing this. I mean, I'd say I spend a good amount of time with friends, but I noticed our neighbors. We got new neighbors, and they literally have friends over every single day, and I'm like, that seems exhausting. But also, how cool is that? That they're friends. Maybe it's family that comes over, but either way, friends and family, both things people have been losing connection to. But they hang out every day, and I feel like whenever you hang out so much, for me, the reason it sounds exhausting to me is because I like to be productive and kind of do my own thing sometimes. But I feel like if you have friends that are hanging out all the time, then it's like, yeah, you can be at my house and just do your own thing while I do my own thing, and we'll serendipitously run into each other and have 30-minute conversation for fun when you sort of have that close of a connection where you're constantly seeing each other. And yeah, I was honestly thinking about that very recently, because I was like, why? I was just looking at why I thought it would be so overwhelming to have people over every single day.
Yeah, I would get a little annoyed because like, hey, I got stuff to do.
Yeah.
But even like I was thinking like our friend Matt, he's been on the podcast a couple of times, and I was thinking about he's starting to get in a little bit into woodworking and stuff and building things. I was thinking like even just hanging out with him and just going over to his house and just like watching him build something and like putting on some safety glasses, some earplugs, watching him work and like, oh, that's cool. Like here, I can hold this for you, doing a project together, whether, the benefit I get out of it is just hanging out with a friend and watching and maybe learning a thing or two about woodworking or manufacturing.
Yeah.
And like he can keep the stuff or whatever, but like just hanging out and like having a good time. Like I think that used to happen all the time. You have like a close friend, you just go and just do a project together. Like you just build something,
build stuff. That's what dudes do is
yeah.
Go build stuff together,
build stuff, build infrastructure. He brought me a grill not too long ago and we talked about like, oh, you could build, like we were walking through my backyard, you could build a patio out here, or if you're going to build that, let me know, like we can work on that together. And so like that kind of stuff, like people need that, and maybe that pours into it a little bit more, is that people don't build stuff like they used to, like men. And I'm probably ranting here or sound like I'm ranting on, you could do whatever you want, I don't really care, but like people used to build things and they used to be proud of the work that they did, and now it's like, yeah, well, I bought this piece of crap coffee table, I could have built it, but it don't really matter. You throw it away in 5 years, and like, well, just build something yourself, like be proud of something. So
I 100% agree. Like you have two poles on this where social media has sort of, or things have taken up our time that just destroys a guy's creative energy. So you don't have the energy to go build stuff. But then there's also just the aspect of you should be building stuff to be proud of. Like, I mean, Matt makes his own furniture, and just, it's not like he's, turning it into some mass produced business. It's like the artisan sort of part of it is very fulfilling. And speaking of, if Matt is listening to this, I need to come over and make a mailbox because mine is completely broken.
Oh, perfect.
Sometime. But actually, I'm going to botch this thread because I saw it a long time ago, maybe 2 years ago. But it was a guy, I cannot remember who it was, but it's someone who's successful, a tech guy who's successful, but he liked to do non-tech things with his hands in his free time. And he had a bunch of buddies that I think they would come out to his workshop or whatever he had at his place, and they would basically build this like small craft brewery. It was not about making a lot of money, but it was just like about hanging out with the dudes and having a good time. And they built everything by hand. And I don't really know what all goes into building a brewery and like storing all this stuff, but it seemed quite intricate. And they made everything look nice, and just like this is, he said, I've done all this tech stuff, but this was one of the most rewarding things I've done. It's just getting to spend time with my friends and building something together. So
that they're proud of, and that they it didn't have to be top of the line, like you said, it's not to they're not doing it to, well, let's make this and we're going to turn it into a $3 million business when we make this cool beer or whatever. You said craft, right? Craft beer.
So I think that's what it was. It was something along those lines.
Something cool and something big and like a big project.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think that a lot of these. This is a way off topic, but you know what a kit airplane is, or a kit car?
Yeah.
You can buy a kit and you build it. Those things are going to go out the window. Those businesses will go out because people aren't going to build things anymore. Mm-hmm. They don't care. I know that there's a guy that I went to church with, and he's an airplane guy. He's got a hangar out at local airfield, and the buddies, like all the old guys, I say old, late 50s, mid 60s, they'd all go to his hangar and they just hang out, and they have a couch in there, like their man cave, and they just work on the airplane, build the airplane together. I don't think that will decline so much in our generation and then cease to exist in the next. So that kind of projects.
I agree. I'm afraid it will. Yeah. But this is like inspiring me to do something like restore a car or something, or something with the.
Let's buy a garage and let's restore some cars. Yeah.
I lost where I was going with that, but I did have this. There's also this part that's like people are overwhelmed, and we've convinced ourselves. I also talked about this in the education podcast at a much longer level, but we've convinced ourselves through like such long school programming that we can't learn things like that. You can only do your individual specialized thing, and you should never really touch anything else. But truth is, you get your hands dirty, you break a couple things, and you end up building something nice eventually, and you build relationships out through that. So
yeah, I've been looking at cars and stuff, like trying to get not necessarily a salvage car, but get a car that I don't really care all that much about, but has potential to be cool, and just work on it. Like when I got hey, I got 2 hours of free time. I know I ordered a bumper or whatever. I'm just gonna put the bumper on.
Yeah. I mean,
doing something like that.
Not necessarily. They're doing this recently, very recently, not necessarily with my hands in the physical world, but my brother's been coming over. We've been building an app, and we work on it 3 or 4 nights a week for several hours after work, and it's honestly been so much fun. We hang out in here and work on this thing, and the wives are in the other room doing whatever they do, and it's like, I mean, I feel closer to my brother than I have probably ever before, and just been in this sort of bonding process of building a thing together.
Well, and maybe we're the revolution to redo this. 15 people out of 100 are saying they don't have close friends or close relatives. It starts with us, I guess.
Yeah.
Not to lose contact.
Let's build a boat
together. Yeah, let's build a boat and then sink a bunch of money into it. But how much do you think these friendships are driving, to get more on topic, sorry, how much of these friendships do you think are driving people into being like unstable or mentally ill?
Oh, I think it's a ton. I couldn't necessarily like definitely 100% connect it or tell you why, but I definitely think that's a huge reason. Like antisocial behavior is definitely very correlated with criminal behavior, or criminal aptitude, I guess is a better way to put it. So I definitely think it contributes. And I actually think it's very, very dangerous, particularly for men, because the more antisocial men, the only people who end up doing like mass shootings and mass killings are antisocial type individuals. You don't see people who very often, I won't say absolutely, but very often you won't see people who are, well connected, doing stuff with their friends, go and do these type of things. It's people who are isolated and
have no purpose. They don't feel like they have purpose.
No purpose. They're like smoldering on the internet, in the darkest corners of the internet, where people are, filling their heads with terrible ideas. And I actually think the more antisocial people you get like this, the more of those very dangerous people you get. And we're going to see the results of that over the next few years if things don't change.
Well, and it's going to be it's a cycle, because now say there's like a mass shooting or mass stabbing or something along those lines of mass violence in an area. Well, guess what? Now it's driving people into their homes more. Well, I'm just not going to go out because
that's true.
I'm scared that this really low percentage of thing happening currently. Well, I'm just not going to go out to the mall because there was a mass shooting in Texas, or 7 people got stabbed.
Yeah.
So, and along those lines, violence happens no matter what. I mean, UK banned firearms, and now I think it's London. London's like the stab capital of the world. They have mass stabbings like every week. So, so it's not necessarily. It's just bad people.
It's like what's the root cause? It's not necessarily the weapons. It's the tool, but what is the root cause? And you'll never be able to take it all away, but can you minimize it? And I think that is a major point of leverage where things. I mean, I don't know how you minimize that at the societal level, but on a personal level, man, if you're feeling disconnected, you need to get connected, because you don't never know what we're all capable of in super dark places.
Yeah. Get involved with church. That's one of the big reasons about
community.
About why God instructed us to have a community. The church, your local church, is to get connected and get involved and to be social and with like-minded people. So, okay.
I want to stay on this thread for one more second, but
go right ahead.
Back kind of where we were before the danger part, but on the idea of like social places and hanging out. There's also this idea of the third place. Have you ever heard that?
Third place?
The third place.
Mm-mm.
It's like third places are like a church where people go hang out, have community, and there are like coffee shops where people just go and just spend all day. I don't think the U.S. really has a strong like third place idea. Whereas if you go to Europe, it's very, very prominent to just go and loiter in a coffee shop for 4 hours every 2 or 3 days. Like, not to really go with a purpose, but to just have these sort of serendipitous encounters with people and hang out, talk, and just sit. And I don't really think we do that in our society. And I honestly really wish we did, I wish I did that as well.
The only people that do it are usually older gentlemen that are retired.
Yeah.
And the people that are also doing that are like the people that I know of are at church. So like every Wednesday they'll go to the coffee shop and it'll be these 20 or 30 guys. And it, depending on the week, it's going to be 15. It could be 25. They just get together and have coffee and a cinnamon roll and breakfast, and they hang out there. They get there at like 6 a.m., 6:30, hang out till 9. Okay, well, I got to go work on my car in the shop. I'm restoring a 1956 Chevrolet, Corvette. I don't know if that was a thing.
Yeah.
I think it was 56. But anyways, they're restoring their old car, and well, and then they'll just get together, and it's like that hangar thing. Like, it's generally older people that are retired that are seeking out this community, and we're so isolated in doing everything that on our individual level that we don't get that kind of community as younger people.
Yeah.
Like, okay, now, say you have a family. Well, my son's got soccer practice, my daughter's in softball, and my 6-year-old is in karate, you know? Okay, well, that's on Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Okay, well, Wednesday, well, I got to go home and do some projects for something. Well, there's 5 days of the 7 days you can't do anything because you got to work during the day and do. So, like, your sense of community is just your family. Now, granted, you're with your family, so it's not as bad as nothing. But we're so involved with trying to do something every day and keeping our days filled and doing everything instead of, I would say, specialization in those kind of things probably benefits you because you have more community time if you need it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So that's my thought on that, my tangent. Okay, so people are kind of just becoming more unstable. I think I saw a thread recently, or I guess the big thing was that lady on the aircraft was saying those people aren't real. Now, I don't know the context behind it. I've seen all the memes where she said she's getting kicked off the flight. She says, I don't care what you guys say. Those people aren't real. And I think somebody said she was referring to lizard people or something. I don't know. Probably on drugs. And then the meme was that she was looking at Scooby-Doo from Spooky Island or whatever. Super funny. But I don't know. People are getting kicked off like planes like crazy now. It started with COVID that I started seeing more of this stuff. During COVID, it was I'm not wearing a mask, and so the 32 people on the flight that didn't wear a mask got kicked off or whatever. Especially in the beginning, like, people were getting manhandled off and they were suing the airlines because of how much like the excessive force that people were using to drag them off the plane. People seem like they're getting. Do you agree with that? That people are getting kicked off like planes like crazy?
Oh, okay. So this is the thing I always ask myself when I see these things, because it definitely seems like there's a lot more. It's always, is there actually more, or is it more prominent on social media? And usually the answer is it's just more prominent on social media. But I actually think this is one of those cases where it's actually more common. I don't know this for sure, and I could not find the graph, but there was like one airline that showed, I'm pretty sure there was an airline that showed like a year or two ago that more people were getting kicked off flights. So that implicates, okay, more people are more mentally unstable on flights. And that's actually matched my own experience. I had a flight where it wasn't like, the type of craziness you see online, but just a lady being really unruly because her bag didn't fit, and they were saying you had to check your bag and pay for it. She was super pissed about it. And I was like, can you just stop like screaming at the workers that are just doing their job? Like, we're all just sitting there listening to this lady yelling at the workers because I actually think it was I don't remember what it was, but something that couldn't fit. And that's just something I hadn't really experienced before on flights. And it definitely seems like we see a video every 3 days that someone is going absolutely berserk, and this lady's not real rant is definitely the funniest one that's been around.
Yeah, the most memed. But yeah, I remember like during COVID, I remember seeing people were getting beat up to get taken off the plane.
Yeah,
because like they call airport security, and I guess is an airport is considered a public place, isn't it? At least,
or federal property. I don't know.
I don't know how that works, but I think the aircraft is assumed to be private property. Like it's owned by the airlines. So
yeah,
like if you're wearing a purple shirt, they could kick you off. Like,
yeah.
Hey, well, sorry, we don't allow purple shirts.
We don't want purple shirts here.
Which, for the longest time, also, it's been known that they cell phones on airlines never really interfered with the air traffic comms. but I think it made people nervous when people would talk on the phone, like while they were about to take off.
Oh,
Like I think it just made people nervous. So
yeah.
I don't really know why, but I think that was part of it, and I think it's just become more mainstream. That's completely
Yeah.
off topic, but what about like road rage and stuff? Like I haven't seen a ton of road rage, but it just seems like people going crazy, flashing guns. It was unheard of in the 90s, at least to my knowledge, of you were tailgating really hard. So we got out, you followed me home and we got off the exit and I was pissed. So I just shot you. Like, it just seems like crazy people are just running rampant.
Yeah.
I guess that kind of goes along the lines of the airline stuff. Like maybe it's just more, I mean, you said it wasn't more just visual, but
something about driving and flying like heightens stress and anxiety and makes you feel more aggressive. And I think when we're more unstable as a society, that tends to lead to more insane incidents. Like, I mean, did you see that video last year where it was road rage and a lady got out and just started shooting at this other car, and there was a baby in that car? Like, nothing ended up happening besides the lady got
arrested for brandishing her firearm and attempted murder.
Yeah. And actually the husband is also with this lady that's shooting, and he like stops her, just like grabs her. What's wrong with you?
I think I remember something like that.
Yeah.
So like I had pretty bad road rage when I was in high school. Like I road raged, not like to that extent, obviously. I'm still here. And I didn't bring any firearms with me, but like I road rage pretty hard. And I kind of just was like, hey, I kind of got to stop this. Like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
Like, they're just driving. And I do the same dumb things they do sometimes. Like, oh, I didn't see you. I'm sorry. But I do, in those situations, I do like wave. Like, hey, sorry about that. Like, I realized I cut you off. I'm really sorry. That was my mistake. Because we all make mistakes. And I was mentioning that to my girlfriend a couple weeks ago about how I used to road rage really bad. And she goes, most people, this is her thought. I don't know if there's science behind it or anything, but we road rage, we think of it as the car that's doing it and not a person. And so we're like less empathetic to people.
That makes sense.
To them, because we think it's like it's an inanimate object. Well, I can get mad at this car as much as I want. It's not going to do anything.
Yeah.
But in reality, there's a person driving that car.
Yeah.
And we just like have that disconnect with, I think it's empathy, the empathetic feeling to them of, well, that's a person. And, you know, they might have made a mistake, but in our mind, we're like, that car's an idiot. I can't believe they did that. That car did that.
No,
so I don't know if that
I definitely think that's probably true. On the 25 things not studied by historians or will be studied by historians, like just tech in general, like new technology that our psychologies did not evolve with, such as this, like a car, where our, you know, whatever lizard part of our brain is working there, it just can't dissociate, like you said, or dissociates the car from the person, from the human, and makes us more aggressive. And I always wonder what other things are also like that in some way, not necessarily in an aggressive way, but in a way that negatively impacts our day-to-day life. And I mean, I'm very gung-ho on tech. I'm not like some Luddite who is anti-technology. Just food for thought.
Well, we've kind of talked about this guy's thread quite a bit. I know it's late in the episode, but what do you think some things are that he missed? Because this is top 25. You've read through it. What are some things that he missed that you want to discuss?
I don't necessarily want to. I already kind of mentioned this one that I just said, the technology, evolved psychology versus evolved psychology, and how we can't discriminate between what's new and what's old. But the other big one, he kind of mentions in it, but doesn't really go to depth, is like the population collapse and the birth rate collapse, and especially in first world countries, especially in Western countries, such as the U.S. which has, I think, a birth rate of 1.64, and you need a birth rate or an immigration rate, I guess, an increased immigration rate, or let's just talk birth rate right now, but a birth rate of 2.1 to maintain the population. So that's a huge difference and will be catastrophic. I think.
The 2.1?
Yeah, 2.1 is replacement rate. Roughly 2.1 is replacement rate, but what we're at right now is like 1.6. And the reason, just a couple of reasons
it's
why.
A 31% increase, FYI.
Yeah, that's mind blowing. I mean, the implications of that in 30 or 40 years is enormous. And really, the only thing that can help that is either immigration, you take in more people, or technology is deflationary and makes up for the lost jobs, which is probably the most likely path. But let's assume that it's not as deflationary as you think. Then the implications are devastating. Like Social Security is not sustainable as it is right now. You think it's going to be sustainable with a huge decrease in the young population versus the old population, in particular when the old population is going to be living longer by a few years because of the advances in medicine. It's just not sustainable. And then jobs in general aren't sustainable, and the climate people can celebrate the population collapse all they want, but in reality, I think that population collapse is more of a threat than climate crisis.
At least right now.
At least right now, to like a thriving society. And I think if worse comes to worse, then you have Great Depression level of economic depression.
So then you can't get the things you want. And
yeah.
Because there's not enough workers to make them. That business goes out of business, and now you can no longer get what you wanted, or it's going to be extremely expensive, in the long lead time.
Yeah.
So I was watching Fox News 25, which is a local news channel here, and they were talking about even the reporter, she mentioned this population collapse literally last night. And I mean, Fox News 25 is not like this huge news organization. It's not new.
Yeah.
And even in Oklahoma, it's not that big. I mean, I'm sure a bunch of people watch it, but she talked about how even that a lot of people are not returning to work. Through even after COVID, and it's been 2 years, year and a half. I don't know when it's universally accepted that it quote unquote ended. I mean, I guess it never ended, but the main story of it.
Yeah.
And how a bunch of people hadn't returned to work, but she said, even if all the people that returned to work that didn't go back to work, even if the people that hadn't gone back to work went to work, we still would have more job openings than we would have people currently. And this is 2023, July of 2023. So maybe Oklahoma needs to start importing people from other places. But like, I don't know. It's insane that it's currently happening. Now, granted, the jobs are maybe not as important. It's, Chicken Express that can't, they have 5 employees instead of 7. So maybe that's, it's not a huge issue because it's just something like that.
Yeah.
But, luckily with manufacturing, a lot of manufacturing has been automated. A lot of important manufacturing has been automated. So that's kind of a saving grace in that.
Yeah. So automation and immigration are the only 2 things that can save from
technology to increase the productivity of a single person.
But you also think about it like technology advances usually by a very small group of people, or happen by a very small group of people, a few individuals. And when you have less people, you have less shots on goal. So less people equals less technological advances, and
less purchasing power. There's less people to buy things now.
Yeah, and it's this vicious cycle that people are very much discounting, I think, with the population collapse narrative.
Hopefully there'll be historians to discuss that.
Historian, you can't be a historian in the future. It's a useless job.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a useless job. I respect historians, but it's not a practical job. In the future, you're in a let's just call a nuclear fallout scenario. Not what I think is going to happen at all. Just going to mass. But yeah. There's no historians in a nuclear fallout scenario. You're surviving.
You might have somebody taking notes, but
yeah.
But like most historians now, they study history and then teach it to other people. That's not going to be a thing. It's going to be this family that doomsday prepped or whatever, they are going to be writing down in your scenario. They're like one person's going to be writing down what happens in their community rather than discussing with everybody.
Yeah.
So, did you have anything else you wanted to discuss? We're getting here towards the end of our time.
I don't, but did you have something that you thought would be added to that list of?
I haven't gone through all the list. One of the interesting ones that's not really discussed is YouTube is the new TV. It's number 18 on the list.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of knew it a long time ago.
Yeah.
And it's something that a previous guest, Chance, and I had discussed about how like YouTube will take over or some video content like that. And families are just going to be watching like Rhett and Link on Good Mythical Morning on their Tuesdays and Thursdays when waking up, instead of the news or something, or instead of watching CSI Miami, they're going to turn on YouTube and look at their favorite creator and that they watch as a family or on an individual level.
Yeah.
And that's just going to be mainstream. Like that is the future. It'll be decentralized from these main powers of Netflix writers and Hollywood writers and who are on strike right now, so they're kind of hurting themselves anyways. But like these powerhouses of Century Fox, or I don't even know what the names of them all are, but they're gonna either collapse or have to run on a lower budget because people are just gonna be watching YouTube.
Yeah,
people are just gonna. I mean, like I mentioned, Good Mythical Morning with Rhett and Link. Granted, they have like a production team behind them, so they're like, you could say they're a powerhouse of YouTube, but it's going to be all, I guess the term is decentralized, and there'll be a ton of creators that are watched instead of these big movie people and so forth. What are your thoughts on that?
I definitely agree with that. That's actually something we could probably expand on in another episode. Just YouTube is fascinating in general. I watch YouTube more than I watch any other TV. So it's,
I mean, like here right now, from 13 to 17-year-olds, 13 to 17-year-olds currently. So 13 would have been born in 2010. I'm old.
That's wild.
And 17-year-olds would be born 4 years before that, so 2006. 41% of them get on YouTube several times a day, which is more than 2, so 3 to like 5 times a day. And then 19% of them are on constantly. So like whether it's music or watching a YouTube creator or watching a tournament on there. And I don't know if that loops in live streams and like Twitch. Like obviously Twitch is not YouTube, but they're very similar. So I don't know if it groups all those together and just labels it YouTube to be easy. I'd have to look under Pew Research, but like 5%. You could call it 11% of less often than several times a week. 11% of 13 to 17-year-olds barely use YouTube less than a week.
That's crazy.
So like YouTube is the future, or some type of video content. Now, granted, it might be a different platform that doesn't shadow ban people or doesn't what's the term? Isn't as censorship heavy. Which some of those are good. Like if you're a 13 to 17-year-old, you probably want some type of censorship to your kids.
Oh yeah.
But that doesn't include YouTube TV. But so you do want some type of censorship. But like as you get to adult, you might turn in from YouTube into Rumble, which is a very less censored platform. So, which, wow, 70% of them don't use Facebook at all. That's crazy.
Wow.
So, yeah, YouTube is the future, or some type of YouTube. I mean, even as you get older, what is it called? YouTube TV. Like that's becoming more of a thing.
Yeah, and decentralization of media is going to be huge. It already is huge, but it's going to be huge. That's why the writers will fail in their strike right now.
Yeah, I saw something that said that the Disney and Netflix and all the Hollywood stuff, they said they were literally just going to wait out until people start foreclosing on houses and stuff. And
yikes.
And so like that could be months, because I think it was my dad, talking to my dad about how sometimes when they go on strike, the unions will pay them a certain percentage of their paycheck. So like they still get paid a little bit so they can still afford to do the strike.
Yeah.
But I mean, Disney and Netflix and Amazon Prime or whoever the strike is for, I think it's most of them or all of them. They got way more money than the union does. I don't care what anyone else says.
And I mean, what good stuff have the writers made anyways recently? It's all just copycat, which I guess is probably pushed more by the production than
Indiana Jones. We should. Have you watched Sound of Freedom yet?
No, I didn't.
I haven't watched it yet either. I need to. Maybe I'll watch it and we can talk about it.
Yeah.
On another future podcast. But anyways, if you don't have anything else, I'll sign this off.
All right.
Well, this has been Something Technical. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.
See ya.